So what is it then? How do we actually define the problem? Could anyone define the problem of homelessness when it involves all of those different angles? Anyone? Would anyone like to even have a go? Go on, Abdul. Go and have a go.
It's the first time. Oh, go on.
Go on, Abdul.
Okay, here goes. I think there's a multitude of issues where the society disconnects or the person disconnects with society and then they're not in sync. And it could be any of those reasons given, but there's a failure in the system and perhaps that individual being accommodated in it.
Right, failure in the system.
I didn't have much time to think.
That's okay. I've just thrown this one at you, haven't I? But again, interview questions get thrown at you to think on your feet. But the critical thinking that Darren's just talked about is something that you've practiced. Your critical thinking muscles are well engaged. So Rohan, you had something to say there about homelessness.
Just to add to Abdul's point as well, homelessness isn't a problem in itself. Homelessness can be viewed in some ways as a symptom of another system failing somewhere. So let's take the case study of the one we always see. Military veteran spends two tours of duty in Iraq, serves his country well. Thank you for your service. But all of a sudden he falls through the net. He can't reset back into civilian life. He was used to discipline. All he can refer to is right. He goes into, not to be presumptuous here, it's just kind of, let's say he goes, right, what are my needs? I need shelter, can't afford rent, right, find somewhere that's waterproof. I need food, right, beg, borrow, and do what I can to get food in my belly. And it goes back to that primal survival instinct. But then, you have stuff like drug addiction that comes in, whether or not it's related to other service dimensions. It becomes a thing. It's not to look at kind of, oh, there's a homeless person there. It's all about looking at what's put them there, what's just happened. So let's say, for example, case in point, after the Iraq war or after a big war that the UK has been involved with, well, we've seen a spike of homeless people outside these towns that have loads of regiments of the British Army attached to them. That's where you look at, oh, hang on, what happened to them when they came back off the choppers from wherever they come? That's just a case study, case example from me.
Awesome. Thank you, Rowan. Thank you, Abdul. So I won't spend too much time laboring on this, but so if you were asked an interview question at your final interview, can you tell me about a time when you've collaborated with others in order to solve a problem? You talked to me about the collaboration that you did as part of your university degree, and I'm thinking the answer's okay. They've kind of demonstrated some of the behaviors, but and then you start saying, so you move into the knowledge and understanding phase when you start talking about, and the reason why this is so important, this skill area of collaborating with others in order to solve a problem, is in dealing with some of the wicked problems that plague society and cause massive demand on the police. And from my research and from the ride along I did and from my observations and from my talking to people who are involved in the policing sector, I'm going to give you an example of a wicked problem. A wicked problem is one that's even hard to define. Homelessness, I'd suggest, is, because Rowan, as you rightly say, homelessness is a symptom of something else. Defining the problem, I could line up 10 professionals from mental health, drug and alcohol, housing. Some would say housing actually they should be the lead for this, because homelessness, housing, don't they go together? Crime, all of those other areas. If you lined up 10 professionals from all of those different areas, I guarantee you one thing: if you asked them all to define the problem of homelessness, they would define it in a different way. And so what we've got from that is a disconnect. And you could do your research into the sort of difficult, complex problems that the police are dealing with, using that critical analysis, using that decision making about having an idea, having some kind of thought process as to what you would do as a police officer. Whether it work or not doesn't matter, but you've got an idea. You've got something that you bring into the table that's going to add value, that sounds exciting to the interviewer, because you could talk about the transferable skills that you've got and how you'd utilize those in bringing together something like a working group of people from all of those different backgrounds with the data that they hold in respect of homelessness in that area, because they've all got different data sets, because they all collect data on different things. And you put those all together and start looking at how we're going to analyze that data in order to identify. Darren knows this. I love 3 things, like power of 3. The top 3 things that we're going to implement in order to make this problem not go away, because wicked problems never go away. They're always going to be there. There's always going to be homelessness. But we either make it better or we make it worse. And so you could look at what the force may have done in the past. Really, for me, dumb things like, whilst they're all roaming the streets, we're just going to seize all of their tents and places where they sleep. So this becomes an unpopular place for people to be homeless, so they'll go somewhere else. That's not solving the problem. That's just moving it somewhere else. So most of the majority of the interviewers that you're going to have, even if they have some bias, will always have a bias towards someone who's critically thinking like that and demonstrating that this is the sort of value you're going to get. Because when I come across someone who's homeless, I'm not just going to walk past them. I'm not going to just walk past them. I'm going to sit down next to them and just ask them a nice big open question. How's it going? How's your day? Oh, it's okay. Now, how's it really? Introduce yourself, build up a rapport, engage in a conversation. You may unwrap a whole load of problems, but they're there to be dealt with. And that would excite me. As an interviewer, that would excite me, because I'd be thinking, I'd love to have this person on my team, especially if they've got a neighborhood policing background, because what I don't want is someone saying, oh, homeless people. Yeah, I've seen a lot of them. I think we just need to lock them up. They need arresting more for the offences they commit. Now, you're talking to someone who's very passionate about homelessness, because I remember as a neighbourhood inspector walking out the police station with about 6 months in as a neighbourhood inspector and tripping over people who were homeless and thinking, they should do something about this. And at that point, I had to have a word with myself, because I remember stopping in the street and just thinking, I'm the they. I am the they. And so we engaged in a project that took us about 2 years, and about 95% of all the people who were homeless over a 2-year period, we managed to get them a roof over their head. And I don't mind sharing it if I can. Can I just share a golden moment from my policing career to try and excite you about policing? It was a moment where I remember, let me just see if I can find it. Hang on one second, see if I can find this. Oh, there it is. I must put up. Well, I'll come back to so you can actually hear me. I must put this on my wall at some point. But we used to get a lot of bad press. This is the other thing you could talk about. We used to get a huge amount of bad press from the Manchester Evening News, especially. Everyone would say the Manchester Evening News, anti-police. And I remember thinking, we do a lot of really good work that we need to be proud of. So I rang up one of the reporters and just said, can I speak to, what was the name again? Nicola Dowling, who'd just written a couple of really scathing pieces about the police. And I just said, look, I've read these pieces, but I think we offer a lot of value here, and I think you'd love some of the things that we do. Why don't you come and spend 2 days with me and my team? I'll give you open access. You don't have to go through corporate comms. This is outside of corporate comms. Yeah, Darren would be like, oh no, that's the sort of thing typically Brendan would do, because I knew corporate comms would want to highly engineer it and probably control it and probably not give her the access that she wanted to create a really good story. Anyway, we showed her the work that we were doing around homelessness, especially Heather Clarkson here with Gary. I mean, how about that for a headline? Hey, how about that for a headline? There you go. And there's Heather Clarkson with Gary. The best I could get from Gary 2 years before was F you. That was about it, really. And he got arrested a lot. We took the Nicola to see Gary and his friend Peter, who we managed to get a roof over their heads. And they were talking to her about how they're still alcoholics, but they're weaning themselves off. Here's a chart that shows our alcohol consumption. It's going down. We've just we're on the waiting list for an allotment. We're trying to eat healthier. We appreciate the trouble we've been in the community, and we're both volunteering now at the community centre. And then Gary gets this pink envelope out of his pocket. And he says, can I just show you something? And he opens up the envelope, and it's a photograph of him and his daughter. And he said, this was taken a couple of weeks ago. I'd not seen my daughter for like 4 or 5 years. My wife kicked me out because of my alcohol problems. And I became a drug addict. And I became, quite frankly, ashamed of who I'd become. I moved to a different part of the country. But as far as I was concerned, I was dead to them. But a couple of weeks ago, I plucked up the courage to get in touch with my wife, my ex-wife. We'll never get back together again, but I just wanted to see my daughter again. And this is me with her. So I'm getting a bit choked up just talking about it because I was like, whoa. And I remember him saying, I've got my back and my daughter's got her father back. And that for me was a golden moment in policing. Golden moment. You could even use that. You could even say, I've spoken to the retired police officer who's talked about the complexity of. Anyway, as usual, I spend a long time making a point. The point being, can you see that? Give me a thumbs up if you can see the value
Brendan,
now.
why you always make me cry, honestly?
Oh, oh. But it's so
Always.
emotional.
You
Honestly.
manage to make me emotional, honestly, every time. Every time I join.
Oh,
Brendan, can I operationalize what you've just said?
yeah.
What Brendan's done is demonstrated he dared to cared. Okay. Now, when you start looking at compassion and empathy and sympathy, what I tell people that I either coach or mentor or students, to be a good, effective police officer, you have to dare to care. Dare to care. And by that, I mean, are you the sort of person that walks the street, when you see vulnerability, you walk away, you walk over? Or are you the sort of person that when you see vulnerability, you will stop, you will say, are you okay? How are you? How can I help you? That demonstrates that you dare to care. And when you look at the behaviors that we want as future police officers or police staff or public sector leaders, your sympathy, your empathy, your compassion is wrapped around in, do you dare to care for others? And Brendan has just really articulated such an emotional golden moment in his career because he dared to care.
Yeah. Thank you, Darren. Interestingly, back then it wasn't valued by the police. It was like really weird. It was like, what are you doing dealing with those homelessness problems? Why aren't you chasing targets? But Darren and I had that conversation yesterday. The police service has moved on a lot from there, by the way. Welcome to Phoebe. We're just talking about operationalizing your degree experience, your graduate experience, operationalize it. So in a long way, I often do. This is why I said we'll probably overrun past an hour. What we want to do is we want to demonstrate that the skills we've developed as graduates, we can operationalize them with all the things that, Darren's talked about. And actually, you could use Darren and I in your interview, that in your research, you've spoken to retired police officer, because it was my sergeant back in 1986, Sergeant Donald Blackhurst, bless his soul. I can call it. I always call him Sergeant Donald Blackhurst, even though I was an inspector. But he deserves a rank. He's just an amazing individual. He had 29 years service at that point, so he joined in the 1950s, and he showed for me the best of policing. He'd been a hardcore detective. Darren and I both know what that involved back in the 70s and 80s. Oh my goodness, he was a rum sort, but I can still remember him saying to me, young Brendan, because I was young then and he used to call me young Brendan, I would be really disappointed if I ever saw or heard that you'd walk past what Darren's just described. What I see as being awesome policing is stopping to care. Kindness, compassion. And this is why, for our academy members, you'll hear us often talk about in operationalizing your experience, don't be afraid to talk about how on a daily basis you will do your best, especially with those people you arrest, to offer an act of kindness and compassion. Because they're some of the most vulnerable people in society. And you might be their only friend at that time. And this harks all the way back to the Peelian Principles, because it was Sir Robert Peel in 1829, the founder of the British Police Service, who talked about how one of the roles of a police officer is to be a friend to all. And I don't think he meant, invite people to Christmas dinner or your birthday party. What he meant was exactly what Darren's just talked about. That as a police officer, you might be the only person that's prepared to talk to that person. And like Gary in the photograph I've just shown you, when we first came across him, pool of vomit, alcoholic, drug-ridden, didn't know what time of day it was, didn't even know where he was. He needed a friend. And Heather was his friend. She epitomized the best of policing. She's left now, sadly. She's doing other great things, but best of policing.